so much for joining us here today. Cléa, I'd like to start with you. Where does your company stand on the decarbonization journey? Maybe you could share a little bit with the audience how far you've come and maybe, where you're at.
Yep, sure. Oh, great, it works. I was wondering. So it dates back, our environmental policy. The first one we published was in 2008. So that's, over 15 years ago. We were the first car maker to be SBTi certified, so wink, wink, in 2019, with a well below 2-degree scope for the scope 1 and 2. And so this allowed us to be quite mature in our decarbonization journey because it dates from 15 years ago. In 2023, for instance, we lowered the carbon footprint of the group, so scope 1, 2, and 3, by 28% compared to 2010. So that's a huge effort that we made over the past 15 years. Obviously, it's not enough. We still have a really long way to go. The major challenge for us, as Louise said, is in our scope 3. Indeed, when you take an ICE car, a thermic car, the scope 3 downstream is up to 85% of the carbon footprint of the car. If you make this vehicle electric, the challenge is not solved because then the scope 3 upstream, so the materials, the battery, weighs up to 90% of the carbon footprint of this car, providing you charge it with green electricity. So we have a lot of challenges residing in our scope 3, both upstream for the decarbonization of the materials and battery, and downstream for the decarbonization of the usage, which partly relies on the green electricity. So we have a few commitments that we've made to be net zero in Europe in 2040, worldwide in 2050, and it also starts with our scope 1 and 2, obviously, and the plants will be net zero in 2030. So that's about where we stand. We've come a long way from 2010, but it's really far from being enough. So we're tackling our 3 scopes in the decades to come.
I really like that realism that you're on your journey and you've achieved a lot, but there's still some room for improvement and way to go. Antoine, maybe coming to you. Obviously, a very different business, L'Oreal. Where are you on your journey today?
Thank you. It's a different business indeed, but I see a lot of similarities with what Cléa was prompting for Renault. We started our journey in 2005 on climate, so nearly 20 years ago. And we were amongst, and I see Louise this morning, amongst the first signatories of the SBTi targets back in 2017. Our journey, a bit similar, is first and foremost driven by our strategies and trajectories for impact. We've been, like you, focusing on the whole scope. I'm glad to say that we've been, because we have the means and we have the control on the scope 1 and 2 to a large extent. We have achieved already 91% of the energy used on scope 1 and 2 for L'Oreal being renewable, and we'll be at 100% year-end, so we can claim next year in 2025 that we'll be there. But I think for the audience, what is more important is the trajectory to get there. It's a long journey. It's an absolute commitment starting from the top and making sure that we manage actions, trajectories with resilience, commitment over the long term. Scope 3, like for Renault, is the key dimension for us. It's not 11 times more. Next year, it's going to be 100% of our emission will be Scope 3 for L'Oreal. So what matters there, and I think we'll get back to this later on, is what Louise was mentioning this morning. Conceiving your product differently, engaging your ecosystems, and making sure that you also drive the upstream, but also the downstream of our consumers' behavior when it comes to sustainable consumption. Voilà. So that's where we are so far.
Thank you for sharing that.
Maybe one thing I forgot to mention, I think it's interesting because I was looking at the booth this morning and it's fascinating, the number of initiatives. We had a chat with Cyril. The solutions are existing. Change can really happen now to the point of this forum. We have been demonstrating since 2005 that you can, in a given industry, it's not easy for each of them, but for us at least, that we can totally decouple growth from carbon impact on scope 1 and 2. We grew by 45% in volume in L'Oreal over the last 20 years, where we decreased by 91% our emissions. So I think it's a message of hope.
For sure, those are incredible figures. Cyril, maybe coming to you, you have a little bit more of a bird's eye view, I guess, in the work that you do. Maybe you could share a little bit what, sort of your feeling of, what Antoine and Cléa are telling us. Does it resonate with you?
Yes, absolutely. So indeed, our scope 3 is lighter than yours, guys. So far more, but we try to behave, and yes, we are autonomous with renewable energies. But yes, that's why we focus on energy to help key players like Renault and L'Oreal. And today, and that's frankly a great news in 2024, is that most of the executives that we meet, and we do studies all over the world, more than 65% of them consider that, yes, there is a business plan for sustainability. But still, as we sit today in Paris, people were sitting in Houston last week, and you see that, okay, there is skepticism. Just to take this example, the European plan is extremely challenged by oil players. There are some up and downs in the regulation, but I think we are all in this stage as a company. We want to have impact. We want to make impact. It's coming from the executives, but it's coming as well from our people, our colleagues. Together, just that you can feel this pressure. We represent like 500,000 people, the 3 companies, Renault. So those people, they are human beings. They want things happen. They want things change. And if they consider that at the end of 2024 we are not at the level of our commitments, they will fire us. I mean, by reputation. So this is where we are, and that's why we are obsessed by action. And as Antoine said, and I look in these beautiful rooms, so many global firms, startups, bankers, funds, which are today pushing solutions to track carbon, to eliminate carbon. So that's a fantastic moment. But the ocean is pretty, I would say, agitated, but we have action plan. And, okay, finish with that. Come back in 2 minutes.
I actually was going to sort of go a little bit off script and ask what keeps you going, but I think you already answered that question for us. So let's maybe move on to understanding, what are some of the challenges? I mean, you already spoke a little bit about the challenges that you're facing, Antoine. Maybe you can give us some very specific examples or sort of, share a little bit more about, what's blocking you from going even faster, and maybe what are you doing to overcome these challenges?
Well, as I said, it's true that the scope 3, and Louis was referring to it, is the challenge in front of us. We had to be exemplary. That's why we are committed to be 100% renewable energy after, of course, sobriety and efficiency measurements, reducing our consumptions and yet transforming it into renewable energy by the end of this year. But to engage our ecosystem is what matters, both upstream and downstream. Louis mentioned the major levers that we are actively working on, and I just want to express the engagement of the 90,000 employees that L'Oreal has across the world. We have a global footprint. We interact everywhere. We conceive, sell, and produce more than 7 billion products every year. It's not the complexity of a car, but that sits in 1.5 billion homes worldwide. So we have a responsibility to engage with ecosystems. First, conception. I don't want to make it too technical, but of course, as Louis was saying, the way we design our products, the way we are making sure that we reduce the impact of our products in their usage and also in their consumption matters. So just an example that is probably famous to many people is the famous reduce, replace, and recycle in our products. And of course, less material equals less emission. It has other virtues on plastic reduction or recyclability, but it's very important to act on this on the consumption side. Engaging the ecosystem, I think it's very clear. Beyond words, we are very active with the CDP. We have made sure that 85% of our key suppliers are actively engaged in CDP and moving from C to B and from B to A. And
how do you do that? What do you do to get them on that
journey? We have 5 key criteria to select any of our suppliers, and sustainability is one of them. And it stands alongside competitiveness, innovation, supply chain, and quality at the same level, right? We will not select, engage, and develop suppliers, and we are auditing them and ranking them all the time. Of course, it has to be aspirational. We want them to be the driving engine of this. But we also, as we are a significant, quite large company, and we are making a lot of deals with them. We have to make sure that they are engaged on the journey, so we put this as a key selection criteria. As I said, we engage them to be on CDP. 85% of our suppliers have joined them. We make large events. It's not in such a beautiful scenery, but we make large events, everywhere in the world, in Shanghai, in Mexico, in New York, in Paris, in Mumbai, where we engage them. We had the chance in L'Oreal to invest a lot in expertise, in resources. We have a lot of sustainability leaders across the globe. We try to share and help them to do these trajectories. And there's also long-term commitments. You know, if you have to make significant investments to be able to decarbonize part of the supply chain, and these suppliers need visibility on this engagement, right? They are very often managed through the EBITDA that they are producing. So we make sure that we give them long-term visibility on certain of engagements so they can make the investments that are required to change. And that's for the upstream part. I'm just finishing because we are a consumer goods company. So the way we engage our consumers is also very important, reducing the amount of water that we use. You know, the biggest impact of the CO2 generation in a value chain like the one of L'Oreal is the electricity that is needed to heat the water to rinse your hair. That's what it is. Skincare and makeup, no carbon footprint emission. Hair, it is. So how do we make our products more efficient? How would you reduce the amount of water that you need to use? And how do you engage your consumers in a sustainable behavior? Voilà.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you for sharing that. Cléa, over to you. Does it resonate? Does it resonate with you? And sort of, you know, what are additional challenges that maybe you see as well?
It does. I'll just go along the lines of Antoine on the onboarding of suppliers. It's really hard for us as a car maker because, as I was saying, in an ideal world where all vehicles are electric, it's not a radical solution. You still have the carbon footprint of the battery and your materials. And it's really hard to onboard this whole value chain because it's a really dense, complex one and opaque one too. So how do we do beyond what you were saying exactly? So onboarding, trying to get them to subscribe to CDP. Not sure how mine in you know, some country in Africa I won't name can subscribe to CDP, but it's quite a hard challenge. Beyond this engagement, what we do is try and make and create an ecosystem of suppliers/partners. So we sign MOUs with mines, we sign MOUs with what we call PCAM, CCAM, so the node of the value chain that refines the minerals. We also create partnerships along the value chain up until the battery so that we have a visibility, a transparency, and some ways to leverage this ecosystem of suppliers/partners. So that's one challenge, scope stream. The second challenge that we have as a car maker is also the price volatility. If you take lithium, for instance, which is key to a battery, it has increased 12-fold in the past 2 years, the price. And then over the past months, it has dropped by half. So how can you make your economic equation in such a volatile environment? And how we tackle this is by trying and create short loops, closed loop with circular economy. If we manage to get the batteries end of life that are now on the roads in Europe and recycle the minerals that are in those batteries that are infinitely recyclable, then we can reinstall kind of a, sorry to sound patriot, but a European sovereignty in those minerals. Bear in mind that 90% of the lithium is refined in China, even the lithium of a battery that is produced in Dunkerque or in Douai. So there is something there that we need to fight for, because even if a vehicle is electric, if it comes from China, it's not that SBTi compatible. So that's the second challenge we are dealing with, and I'll stop there because I'm way beyond my time.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think in the sort of prep for today, we discussed a little bit that difference between forcing your supply chain and influencing and working together with your supply chain. So what both of you said is sort of really highlighted the need to see, you know, we're all in this together, so how can we actually make that progress together? Cyril, maybe coming to you, and I'll give you maybe more than 2 minutes, but what are some of the challenges that you're sort of, you know, the clients that you work with are coming to you with, and maybe also what are some of the solutions?
But yes, it's the ecosystem is a fantastic word because it means action as we speak. For years, ecosystem, you know, it was a gentle consulting word. Now it's time to act, and so there's a fantastic example at L'Oreal around your Eco Beauty score. But what we see and what we do, what we see, for instance, in the very sensitive topic of the green fuel for the shipping industry, you see Maersk and CMA CGM, which are two major competitors, number 2 and number 3 in the world, working together, investing to mutualize risk. What we are doing in the battery space, namely with our engineering component, is to enter into a Vercors, the gigafactory battery topic in the north of France, to be, among others, mutualize investment, bring solutions. So it's not a dream, it's money, it's investment, and it's a roadmap. So I really like the word ecosystem. But there is another play which is important and which is so concrete, which is the regional play, local play. When you were talking about Douai, about where Renault is developing, the future of electric cars, it's important that in those regions, we mutualize players that find solutions to source, to innovate, to organize the supply chain, and to organize the transportation in a local place. Just to have in mind the fact that in Europe today, to see that it is in reach, we have roughly 20 regions or hubs that represent, in terms of emissions, 50% of the European CO2 emissions. So it gives you a lot of hope, Luis, even if JFK is not the next president, but it's extremely strong when you see those figures. We can act. The same, there are great examples in Norway around the battery coast in the south of Oslo, where again, there are minerals, rare minerals, there are harbors, there are gigafactories of batteries. The same in the Netherlands with the Hydrogen Valley. So we strongly believe, and each time we can, we invest in those local investments. Think about Dunkirk in France, think about Fos-sur-Mer. Together, they are almost 40% of the French emissions, those two places. So really, it's important to put intensity and focus our action plan on those regional hubs. And hopefully, we will be, after the European election, an acceleration on the roadmap, but very focused on those regional hubs.
Thank you for sharing that. We heard from Lewis that we need to change now, and there's many people here in the room who are on this journey with you together. So what I'd love to hear, Marie-Claire, starting with you, what is one bit of advice or knowledge that you wish you'd had when you'd started on this journey? Or maybe one little tidbit that you can give the people here to not lose hope as they move along?
What we've learned at Renault was that in the end, it's quite easy to have a corporate decarbonization policy, right? The CEO gives a speech, everyone connects, there's an article, it's in media, and business is done, right? It's a lot harder to onboard everyone in the company and to make a real change for everyone's job, within everyone's reach. So what we developed over the past 2 years, which has really helped, and I think it can be developed in any company, in any structure, is a tool that allows each and everyone in the company to have a visibility on the carbon footprint of what he's dealing with. So the car he's working on, the engine he's working on, the materials he's going to put in the car, the country he's going to sell the car in, what's the carbon footprint of the electricity, what's the carbon footprint of the diesel or the gas there. And so this tool is really an empowerment tool. And it says, okay, the company has this decarbonization trajectory, but each and every one of you can help in this trajectory. And this is the tool that gives you a visibility on this. And you also have levers to act. So along with the tool, we also had this huge training to help people understand what is decarbonization and how they can help. So it really is useful because it becomes everyone's matter. It's not this corporate thing that stays in the headquarters. It's everywhere, in our plants in Brazil, in Morocco, in France, everywhere. It's a really important and empowering tool that we've developed, and I engage everyone here, whatever the structure, whatever the size, to empower each and everyone in the structure you're working in to make change happen.
I really like that. How can you make it personal for every employee? Cyril, maybe from you, what's your piece of advice or sort of your learning that you could share with everyone here today?
There is one philosophical one and one digital one. On the philosophical one, I would say that we have been obsessed, trained, educated by a very strong paradigm, which is satisfaction is speed. the more you deliver fast to the client, the more the client is happy. And this is burning the planet. So we need to find an alternative, and it's probably in the end of L'Oreal and Renault, but the way we educate the consumer and say, okay, there are other levels of satisfaction rather than, speed and so. The second one goes back to the, sorry for that, it's my day-to-day business, but to the day-to-day digital. Yes, today, as we speak, virtualization, digital twins, it helps to reduce, and to optimize the industrial processes and to reduce emission on the most emittive industrial processes. So I think we need to play in those two dimensions, the culture one, as mentioned by Antoine and Cléa, and the digital one, which is a fantastic tool as we speak. And I like to say a word about GenAI. Probably this is extremely promising. We'll, I hopefully come back next year with strong use cases. Let's not take it as just, okay, it's energy consumption. It is a way to solve very complex calculation in terms of, in the world of nuclear energy, in the world of renewables. So this is part of the future. Let's not deny it and have a very pragmatic view about it.
Thank you so much. Antoine?
I think you said, the culture, it's a question of culture. It's a cultural journey, stating very loud and clear that your extra financial performance, and I put climate, but sustainability in general and ethics stands alongside your financial performance matters. It starts from the top. And as you said, I'm just the messenger on stage, but I hope I represent quite well the 90,000 employees that are actively engaged in this across the world in every function, day in, day out. Having 90,000 activists on this climate change really matters to us, and with various programs to do it. Maybe the other thing that I wish we would have learned earlier, because we actually did start in 2005, focusing on climate, and along the way, and since 2013 now, we approach it in a very holistic manner, and everything is interconnected. You cannot dissociate climate from water, from resource preservation, from biodiversity, and social impact. And that's what we're trying to do collectively. And there is a piece of advice is try to, without making it too complicated, driving actions that are meaningful, that have an impact, but embrace the whole dimension. I think it matters to have a sustainable performance.
No, I think this the systemic view is incredibly important, and obviously we're focused on decarbonization here today. But there are many other topics coming down the pipeline. So I don't know, Cléa, what is the big thing that you're now that you're on your decarbonization journey? What's the next thing that you're looking at?
So it's twofold. Yeah, exactly like Antoine said, you can't really focus on decarbonization because you may only shift the weight of your impact from carbon to something else. So it can really not be that positive. So our next move is the one I was referring to earlier. It's on circular economy. So especially when it comes to the electric vehicle value chain, how do we reduce our impact by making and creating a new industry dedicated to the car-to-car loop? So how do we consider the millions of cars that go to waste every year as a resource? How do we recycle the steel, the aluminum, the batteries? And how do we reinstore a European sovereignty, especially on minerals? So that's our next move. And the move after that we're trying to trigger at the very same time is on biodiversity. Because, again, I'm insisting on the electric value chain because everyone thinks it's the solution. Not everyone in the room, because I know there are a lot of criticism. But the electric value chain has a lot of challenges when it comes to water, when it comes to soil, when it also comes to social issues. So biodiversity and social issues are our next move on the electric value chain, trying to reinstore an ecosystem of partners and suppliers that guarantee that our European standards are deployed everywhere we go and everywhere we source. So that's circular economy and biodiversity.
And Cyril, apart from obviously the digital and GenAI agenda, maybe to sort of spin this question a little bit different, what makes you optimistic that we can actually move ahead into these new horizons?
First, the people in our companies, they are extremely optimistic, aggressive, pushing us to move forward. And the level of innovation, frankly, talking about biodiversity, our labs are invaded by startups coming to test, synthetic biology, working with bigger groups on the use of water. So this is a moment where, as I said, let's not be skeptical. Okay, there are political debates there, but we have the solutions, we have the people, and we have the roadmap. That makes me extremely, extremely optimistic for the next 3 years.
Antoine, final word to you. What gives you hope?
What? We're not focusing on something next. We're more focusing on what we've already declared, and we have set very, very clear targets on all the dimensions by 2030. It's called LOreal for the future. It keeps us very busy. And there's a lot of solutions that are not there today. So it's an ecosystem change, as we said. We will learn things along the way. I think that's one of the things that we've learned is that you don't need to have the solutions to set the ambitious targets, because you will find along the way. And you have to be very positive. We saw it this morning. We had a tour before. We saw some startups that are extremely innovative. If we are creating the conditions for them to go at scale and find solutions for us, but also, of course, for everybody else. I mean, we are in ecosystem like EcoVutisco or other things. That would be great. So focus on the next bush and make sure that you help with your power all the rest to come. So we'll have an impact altogether.
Thank you so much. Let's give a warm round of applause to the panel.
Thank you.
I really appreciate all the insights shared, and I look forward to continuing discussions with you. Thank you.